Hello, this is a video to explain how to edit the structure of your information pages. So editing the structure of your information pages will allow you to pick which variables are on your information page, what order they're in, define some of the options, and do lots of other things. So there's actually a couple of different ways that you can access the settings to edit the page structure. The first is you can just look up a client, select an information page that you want to edit, and then database administrators on the bottom right will see this link, edit page structure. Click on that and there you are. The other way that you can do it is you can go from the home page, go to database administration, go to information pages section, select the page that you want to edit, and then select edit page structure. So here we are, we see on the left all the variables that are on this page, and not just the variables, we can see that there are entire blocks of information here that are point in time blocks of information. We can see that there's headers, so these headers are placed here to separate different types of questions, and we can see that there's lines of text that have been placed in. And each of these elements can be moved around by just clicking and dragging. So if you want to change the order of things, that's all there is to it. Over on the right side of the page, we can see the things that we can add into our page structure. So let's say we wanted a new section header to break apart kind of the name and the contact information here. So we could put that there, and then we could separate that by that. Let's say you want to have a new text separator to give another prompt to your staff about how to fill in the information. So that gets added there. And on some pages you can add in a new variable. Please see the other video I made on adding in new variables to your structures. The link to that video is in the description of this video. And then on the right side, below that, these are all the variables that we have already created but are not part of this page structure. So let's say we wanted to add these disability questions into our miscellaneous demographics group of questions. We would just take them from our unused bucket and drag them in. And finally, on the right bottom is a Save Changes button, and that saves the page structure. So now that we know how to change the order of the elements, now we have to learn how to change the elements themselves. So on the right side of each of these little elements is a little settings icon. And so we can click on that, and each type of thing that's on your page structure has potential to have different settings for them. So for this text separator, we can click here and we can put in, change what the text says. So something to help staff understand what to do there. The headers, we can change the text here. Like that. And on the variables, we can change their names. There are other variables that will let you change the options that are available in that variable. I made another video on instructing you on what to do for this, so please see the description for this video for the link on how to do that. And you'll also notice that some of these variables have a remove from this structure option, and that just gets rid of it. I guess, well, pretty much everything has that. So we can remove this header, or we can remove this block of text. We also have some special settings available for the point in time blocks of information. So we can click to edit the point in time structure, so that jumps us right to the move in and move outs point in time structure. We can change how the variables that are on here, or we can edit how this point in time will appear on this information page. So the display settings for that. So there's two different settings that we can do here. So it wants to know, okay, what do I do about any potential previous entries? Should all the latest entries be expanded? So only the latest entry be expanded, and then any past entries be collapsed. So the answers to them are not readily visible. You have to kind of manually click and open them up to see what they are. Or should any entry with an exit date be collapsed? So if you have a point in time block of information that has some sort of closing exit date, the database will know if an exit date is entered, then I should collapse that. We don't need to see that right away. Or all entries expanded. So no matter what's in there, every question that's entered for that point in time should be expanded out. So this is a move in and move out block of information, so I think entries with exit date collapse makes sense. So if somebody's has a previous move in entry that has an exit date, we want that to be collapsed, and we want to see only the latest. Next we can say, okay, which of the point in time questions do we want to appear on this information page? So the default is just every question, but we can say, okay, I only want certain questions. So let's say we only want house and room and move in and move out date to show up right now when looking at this page. So we can set that. And finally, each element on the page, you can control its importance or its visibility. So these are two really powerful settings here. Importance means the database will remind staff to fill in this variable. So the default is important never, but you can say, I want this variable to always be important, so that staff are always going to be reminded, you've got to fill this question in. We always need to know the client phone numbers. You can also control the visibility. So when should this variable be visible? The default is always. This variable will always be visible on this information page. Or you can change it to only when a certain condition is met. So we only want this variable to show up when a certain condition is met. Now in the case of this client phone numbers, we would want to say we want it to be always important and always visible. And now that we've changed the importance settings, the settings icon here is highlighted in yellow just to kind of give you a little visual reminder that there are some conditions applied to this element on the page. But there are some other variables, like let's say primary race other specified. We don't want this variable showing up unless primary race is selected as other. So to do that, we click on its settings, importance visibility, and we want to say it's important only when certain conditions are met, and it's visible only when certain conditions are met. What's that condition? We want to only have it be when primary race is entered with a specific value of other. So now with these settings, this primary race question is only going to show up when primary race is selected as other, and when primary race is selected as other, the database will know, okay, now that that condition is met, this question has importance and it has to be filled in. Other questions, you might want to say, I only want this variable to be visible when a certain condition is met. Let's do another example. So let's say we only want this second disability question to show up when first disability is entered with any value. So we're going to go edit its importance and say second disability should only be visible when first disability is entered with any value. Now we're not saying that it's important, we just want to say that question should only show up once somebody has selected one first disability. And then we can go to the second disability question and say this variable should only show up when second disability is entered with other. and we want it to be important only when these conditions are met there. So it's kind of like this domino effect where these two questions won't show up at all until first disability is selected as anything, then second disability will show up. And then if somebody selects other from second disability, that question will show up. Headers and text separators can also have their visibility controlled. So we can change here and say this race, ethnicity, language header should only be visible when a certain condition is met. So only show that when gender is selected with female. It's not the greatest example, but there's plenty of other ways where this can be very beneficial. And text separators. So we only want this block of text to show up when first disability is that. Okay, so these importance and visibility settings can be really, really powerful for making it so your information pages flow really nicely. There's not a lot of clutter, and the importance is really important for having your data completion reminders understand which variables should be reminded for staff on the page that need to be filled out. And finally, you might notice that when you go to click on some of these settings options, certain options here are crossed out. So you cannot edit this variable's name, and certain other things like the options here, you cannot edit this variable's options. And the reason for this is because certain variables are locked, either because they are essential for how the database operates, like the name variables, or they are tied to your funder reports. So, and it will, if you click in here, it'll explain to you about that. The variables that are tied to your funder reports, you cannot change the options to those because all the options for that variable have been manually programmed into your funder reports. So EmpowerDB support has to be the one to go in and change the options for those variables, so that we can also change how your funder reports understand that variable. All right, so please, again, if you're curious about adding and editing variables, take a look at the description of this video and see the links for how to do that. Thanks.